aside from her backstory, that's also a big reason. Honestly, I'm a big sucker for anything surrounding the Chiriden crew, those being Rin, Utsuho, and the Komeijis. Alright. I know this is very different from what I usually do, but bear with me. So about a year ago, I found myself browsing the old Touhou subs channel, which used to provide translations for Touhou fan videos brought over from Nico Nico. It's always nostalgic going back to them, since these are some of the first pieces of doujin stuff I ever experienced, and honestly, it's a genre of fan media that I still feel is very underrated this side of the world. Except for like Asana Reimu, I guess, which I might also talk about someday. That might be because it can be very hit or miss, especially nowadays, and they're usually what I'd call very derivative works, in the way they depict the Touhou characters. But anyways, while I was at it, I happened to glance over this thumbnail and immediately it caught my attention. The very sharp art style, the bright colors, depicting the scummiest Satori I've ever seen in my life. Not to mention the title, Wheelchair Detective Satori. I was curious, and I mean, how could I not after all that? And going by everything, I was expecting something like KKHT8, which is that's a whole can of worms I'm not gonna be opening right now, but whatever. I bid and watched the first video. Then the next. Then the next one. Then the next, and by the time I knew it, I had watched all 11 episodes, I found myself with more questions than I had answers. I was completely taken aback by it. So naturally, I did what anyone in this situation would do and subjected my friends to it. And now I'll be subjecting you, the viewer, as well. Wheelchair Detective Satori is, let's just call it a web series for convenience. Made by donjuan and uploaded to Nico Nico from May 2013 to February 2014. Yes, way before the official cheating Detective Satori manga started in 2019, and somehow better than it as well. But anyways, Wheelchair Detective Satori is by and large a comedy, I'd say. Most of it coming from the dark humor and the bizarre nature of the setting and everything that happens. It all just feels very surreal, with the implication of a more contemporary version of Gensokyo, even though we don't really get to see much of it, and the liberties taken when it comes to the characters. And all of this is already perfectly encapsulated in the premise. A vengeful spirit escapes from Chiriden and Satori goes out to look for it, but in her search she gets run over and ends up in the hospital, now determined to search and bring to light the identity of her attacker. But anyways, trying to explain comedy to me feels like trying to explain the joke, which usually doesn't end well, so really the best way to get it is to experience it yourself. There's quite a few visual gags too, often relegated to references, but the most notable is probably how the contents of Satori's IV bags change throughout the series to things that definitely should not be there. One of my favorites, and probably the most important gag of this show, is the culprit song. So throughout the series, Satori solves a few other cases, with the two biggest ones ending with the culprit singing a song as they confess their guilt. The situation builds up to its most intense peak, they know they've been found out and there's no one to run, and instead of ending it there with the case closed everyone go home, it just completely shifts gears. The culprit gets the microphone and just breaks into song for the climax, and it works. The visuals, the music, just the way the whole scene is crafted, it just works. And it's a great way to end those cases on a high note. Another aspect to this is, of course, all the references the series contains. The ones that make the most sense are probably the parodies of other detective fiction, like the very first opening being in the style of Furuhata Ninsaburo, a Japanese detective drama inspired by Columbo? Huh. And of course, the main theme of Detective Conan is also used extensively throughout and kinda becomes part of this series as well. Aside from those, halfway through the series we see this just beautifully crafted Shin Megami Tensei interface, and all throughout there's various Pokemon-shaped objects. I think the good thing is that if you don't understand where they come from, it doesn't really diminish the experience. And I say that because a lot of them went over my head the first time around and I still had a good time. This is especially true for the openings for the episodes, pretty much all of them parody an opening of some other media, and can we talk about this? Because they're so good. Not only do all of them fit perfectly with the overall mood of the series and offer some foreshadowing for the events that will occur in the episode, but they're just great recreations in general. It's obvious that there was a lot of effort put into them, and I can't imagine just how much time it must have taken to get them looking just right. And speaking of that, really all the art in the series is very good as well. It's all so stylized, so colorful, everything just pops out, and it somehow fits this kind of story really well. The character designs are also very good, from cute to goofy to simply off-putting. And this was also, believe it or not, an inspiration for the creature you see on me wherever I go, so hey, you're getting some backstory in that. Of course, there is also the whole mystery element of solving cases, and it's pretty good. if a little bit hard to follow. They usually involve a lot of information thrown all at once, and they sometimes are just extremely cryptic and convoluted, to the point where it makes me wonder if you're really supposed to play along or just see how it develops. Especially since this series is very fast-paced, so even during explanations I had to constantly pause and go back to try and make sense of what's going on. Still, it's compelling enough to make you want to see what happens next, and to at least try and discover the truth behind the events yourself. And this leads us to the actual overarching story Wheelchair Detective Satori tells, the mystery of who really attacked Satori and what their plan really is. As it often is the case with doujin, this series focuses on the characters of Satori and Komeiji. Throughout the first episodes we don't really see Koichi a lot, but whenever she does show up, it's to try and assist her big sister with the cases and generally to accompany her during her recovery, which doesn't work very well, but Satori appreciates the effort nonetheless. That all changes in episode 7, in the middle of the Murder in the Deep Green arc, which involves a whole plan hatched by Sanae, inviting 11 guests to the grand opening of the Hotel Deep Green. Here Satori uses Koichi for her investigations by making her spike Nitori's drink with a harmless drug, which ends up killing the kappa instead. This directs all suspicions towards Koichi, and for a while everyone believes her to be the culprit, with Sanae in particular constantly attempting to frame her. Satori tries to reassure her sister that it was not poison, and in fact it is later revealed that Sanae was the one behind all the events, including the poisoning of Nitori. But the damage was already done, and cemented in Koichi's mind that Satori does not see her as anything more than a tool for her investigations. This all culminates in Koichi, well, pushing Satori down a flight of stairs and then going off on her own. Then the Rock appears. Now that Rock, the Rock from Satori Animism's first stage, he even has a page on Touhou wiki. And through his memories, bear with me, through the Rock's memories we'll learn what Koishi's been doing and how she feels about her big sister, right as she gets captured by the mastermind, the one behind Satori's attack, who plans on exploiting Koishi's weak mental state, mentioning that yokai can't really be killed unless they lose the will to live, which explains why none of the deaths so far have been permanent. And to go even further, they lied to Koichi that it's been a month since she got kidnapped, which finally proves to her that Satori does not care. In reality, Satori arrives at the scene almost immediately, but she's so engrossed in the whole detective play that she wastes a lot of time with her monologue, explaining how she saw through the mastermind's riddles, before she finally brings to light who the mastermind is, the vengeful spirit escaped from Chireiden who had been possessing Marisa. Satisfied with her complete victory, she goes over to see Koichi and to add salt to the wound, we learn that she could have been saved if she was found earlier. That is, if Satori didn't waste all that time with her explanations to stroke her own ego. On the first episode, we see Koichi visit Satori at the hospital, as a heart rate monitor ticks to the beat of the song Beautiful Name by the Backhorn, with the song suddenly stopping when Satori wakes up. Here we see a recreation of that scene, except the positions have been swapped, and instead of ending with Koichi waking up, the song just continues, with the lyrics perfectly encapsulating how Satori feels at this moment. It all builds up to the chorus, and it's now when Satori herself grabs the microphone, like the other culprits did on their cases, showing that she truly believes this to be all her fault. As the song reaches its end, we can see the monitor in the background again, ticking alongside the music, with the last note lingering for a few seconds. Oh man, where do I even begin with this? I remember the first time watching this I got to this point and, on one hand, I was amazed at how well crafted and engaging the storyline was, especially once we get to this very last scene with all the callbacks and, well, just how fitting the choice of music is. It doesn't come out of nowhere, it doesn't break any rules, it manages to have the impact it needs to have, and yet it did leave me a bit confused about how to feel about it. I mean, it was just in the previous episode that we were talking with a Rock. Is it a tragedy that Koichi died? Is it some form of karmic retribution for Satori? Or is it just another gag altogether? Maybe a combination of all these things? I don't know really. And it's that unclear intention that kinda makes this ending not feel as satisfying as it should be. As it could have been, because, I mean, another reason it really bothers me is that the way everything is set up is just perfect. At first it seems like the spirit just wanted to get back at Satori because she kinda sucks or whatever, and throughout the whole series we think that, well, that's why they tried to kill her, right? But seeing the events that happened in the last few episodes, coupled with the fact that yokai can't really be killed just like that, something the mastermind knew by the way, makes you wonder if this was really the plan all along. To strike Satori where it hurts most by not only taking her sister away, but to have both of them unknowingly play a part in the events. And that's great, I love that, that's a really genius story to write, and like I said, it still manages to somewhat stick the landing within the series' own rules. Just maybe it needed a bit more time and some more focus to really reach its full potential. Wheelchair Detective Satori is a comedy. I mean, one of the episodes even says psychedelic detective comedy, which is, yeah, Yeah, that's a pretty good way to describe the whole experience. It offers a really bizarre rendition of Gensoku and its inhabitants that I really enjoy watching, which not only makes a good base for all the gags and jokes, but it also helps build up tension and a feeling of uneasiness, before you swiftly get reminded of what the series really is. You could say this applies to the ending as well, even if again I feel like it's not as clear as it should be in that case. Really, the whole time I spent writing this video, I just kept wondering if I'm really looking into things too deep, or if there's actually something to look at here, and I feel like that's a problem that shouldn't be there. Anyways, the art style also adds a lot to the experience, giving us characters that are full of personality, especially with Satori, goddamn. Donjuan really leaned hard into the scummy side of Satori and this design just nails it. Everything has something interesting to show, there's a lot of subtle details to look out for as well, and really I just love it. Definitely the biggest takeaway from the series for me. Again, I think the story could have been handled a little bit better, but it doesn't really ruin the whole thing for me, and I'd still put this somewhere close to my favorite fanworks. Below the sequel that is, but we're not talking about that today. By the way, at the beginning I mentioned cheating Detective Satori or Foul Detective whatever, and yeah, there is the obvious comparison to draw there, but just as I was finishing recording this voiceover, it hit me that both of those stories involve a vengeful spirit as a central character. Really make you think. Fuck. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to support the channel, maybe comment if you feel like it, and stop by my streams on Twitch if you have the time. With that, see you next stream.